I did a video a couple months ago where I gave you guys some recommendations for autumn that give like fall vibes and are perfect for the season, and you guys really liked that one. So I'm back today with another book recommendation video for our second day of Bookmas, and today we're going to be talking about winter slash Christmassy book recommendations. I cannot be more excited to talk to you guys. This is the first video that I'm actually filming for Bookmas, and I'm currently doing this in October. So we're doing this very far in advance, and I cannot believe are talking about like wintry Christmas books, but when you're watching this, we are deep into December, we are deep into the holiday spirit, and I want to read books that make me feel cozy and or give some Christmassy vibes. So we are dressed in a probably too warm of a sweater for the weather outside, but we're gonna make do. The lighting has been very like in and out today, so it may be a little inconsistent in this video. Hopefully you don't mind that, but I do have with me a very tall and precarious stack of book recommendations for you guys, plus some more on my Kindle. So we have a lot to talk about, and I don't want to waste any more time. So if you want to see more book recommendations videos from me, specifically during the Bookmas season, I'm posting every other day until December 24th. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's get into the recommendations. I am sweating. I'm sweating. It's hot in here, but it's fine. We're gonna make do. So just like I did with my autumn video, I'm dividing this like book list into 3 different categories, so you can kind of pick and choose which kind of book you want to read, and I will also have those in the chapters below this video so you can like see where you want to watch. So the 3 different like categories are perfect cold vibes, fantasy with snow, kind of a vague category, and then we're gonna end with warm and cozy Christmas romance. So starting out at the very top with perfect cold vibes, the first book on this list is absolutely Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This book gets so much hate, so do not click off of the video just if you don't like this book, okay? I promise we will talk about a lot more, but I actually am in the side that really loves this book and loves this series. Is it a perfect romance series? Absolutely not. But this is a hockey romance college book that starts a trilogy of the Maple Hill series, and we follow our main characters, Nate and Anastasia. Anastasia is a figure skater, and Nate is a captain of the hockey team, and at their university, the 2 rinks that they use, one of them gets trashed or breaks down, so they have to like share this one rink and like plan out scheduling, and with all of that conflict going on, the 2 of them get to know each other, they have a lot of friendly banter, and then we get a lot of spicy, fun romance, and it's honestly a great time. Some people really hate on this book because specifically this is like one of the examples of a really cartoonish cover with a lot of explicit sex scenes in here, so it like gets a lot of hate for being directed towards children, but then very not PG content. And I get that. The cover, I don't like cartoon covers very much. It's not my favorite thing ever, I won't lie, but that being said, you're gonna have a good time. And honestly, I had a great time. The Uber scene does not bother me. I thought there was just a lot of fun in this, and honestly, as a college kid myself, this is the best book I've read of college kids being depicted well, okay? Like, they are so flawed, they make so many mistakes, they're petty, they don't clean them up after themselves sometimes, you know, but they are genuinely funny. They sometimes have really good and heartwarming friendships, and I think that Hannah Grace just writes my age demographic really well as someone who is in that demographic. So if you want a really fun college romance, and it's also the start of a series that are interconnected, so every book is a different couple, but they all are in one big friend group, and it's really fun to see like that found family with all of them, definitely pick up Icebreaker. It's a good time, and in my opinion is worth the hype. The next book I want to talk about is Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a very old book series. I think this came out in like 2010. So when my sister was born, who is now 15, that's actually wild. But this is a book I always recommend, specifically during the winter season, because this is one of my favorite series from my childhood. It is definitely a YA book, but this is a werewolf romance. So we follow our main characters, Sam and Grace. Grace is a human and Sam is a werewolf, and Grace lives in the woods with her parents. She's an only child, and she always has seen these wolves in the backyard because they live in like a very foresty area up north, and she always loves taking pictures of the wolves and everything like that, and she feels like a specific connection to this one with yellow eyes. And one day she goes onto her back porch, and there is a boy lying on the porch without any clothes on, and he has the exact same yellow eyes as her wolf, and the story goes from there. I adore this series. It is absolutely so overdramatic, so early 2010s type of writing, and it's blunt and dry, and it's not great literature, but it just is so nostalgic for me because this series I've read like 12 different times over the course of the past like 10 years of my life. I'm obsessed with it. I love the characters. I think it's so melancholy, and the cold vibes really emanate from this book because specifically in book 2, there is like issues with like being a werewolf and like staying cold, because in this world, in the summer months you're a human and in the winter months you're a wolf, but the longer you are a wolf, you start becoming the animal year round instead of turning into a human. So you have to stay in like cold areas during colder months to keep your wolf form. And then on the flip side, if you want to stay human, you have to stay in warm areas, in places where the summer lasts longer. It's very temperature and seasonal focused. And I think I just love these characters so much. And I love the, again, melancholy vibes. And I think it's just one of my absolute faves, and I cannot go without recommending it. Even if it's not like the perfect vibe for you, I understand, but I would give it a try or recommend it to someone who is loving a YA book or potentially like is in middle school and would like a book like this, because as a werewolf girl, okay, this is one of the things that started my obsession and I'm still thriving years later. So highly recommend Shiver. The entire trilogy is really good. Book 4, we can skip, don't mind that one. But books 1 through 3, I adore. The next book is Anastasia by Sophie Lark. Now I hesitate to recommend this book because I know Sophie Lark has gotten a lot of controversy recently and there's been some stuff released about her specifically being very hateful, and I haven't researched enough to really talk about this fully, so I can't say whether or not it's true or false, but I don't want to like, you know, promote her if that's the case. So we're gonna separate art from artist here, but I will just say the book Anastasia is really, really good. This is Sophie's first step into fantasy. From what I've seen, she usually writes like dark mafia romance, but this is her retelling of the story Anastasia, like just like the movie that Disney made. So we follow Princess Anastasia and she meets this guy whose name I have forgotten, so let me pull it up in my Goodreads. Okay, his name is Damien and he's a young Cossack, I think I'm pronouncing that right, rebel. So basically like he is more of like the indigenous people that live up in Russia. And so it kind of takes the story of Anastasia, like that we know, like the true story that has been fictionalized multiple times, and it kind of puts another twist on it with dark magic and with the more indigenous native people, and it has a little bit of romance in it. It has a lot of like dark elements, but one thing I remember about reading this book is it takes place a lot in like snowy mountainous climates, and she's outside with Damien a lot and they're riding horses together and things like that in the cold. And I just remember reading this book and thinking it was like perfect for the time of year that I read it in. So it has been a couple of years since I first read it. Don't remember everything about it, but I do remember the writing being really immersive and the imagery being really, really nice. So if you want like a more atmospheric kind of fantasy, pick up Anastasia. And maybe if you don't want to support Sophie Lark, try to get it secondhand so you don't have to like support her monetarily. Next is a book I actually recommended in my autumnal video. I feel like a couple of these books do cross over from both videos because they give the same like cold, cozy vibe in both autumn and winter, but I think that this book specifically works for both, and that is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I absolutely adore this duology. I think it's so good. I need to reread it, but this is a very, very popular BookTok book. If you haven't heard of it, well, here we go. And this follows our main character, Kaz, who is a surprisingly 17-year-old thief slash mini crime boss, I suppose, in this world and city called, it starts with a K. What is it called? Ketterdam, that's what it's called. He wants to pull off this heist where they steal something very, very important from a very well-guarded prison up in the North Mountains. I think it's called literally the Ice Court, and there's lots of snow and cold ice and things like that. Yeah, it's called the Ice Court. And so he puts together this like gang of 6 different members. So it's him, Nina, Inej, Matthias, Wylan, and Jesper. And every single character is so special in this book. Not only is this one of the best instances of found family I have ever read in my entire life, and I think that the connections, mostly platonic, between all these characters are just so strong and beautiful, but I also think that the characters each have their own very interesting like developments and complexities and flaws, and I love the way that Leigh Bardugo writes any book ever. I've read 3 or 4 of her books by now, and they're all just phenomenal to me. And I think that this book specifically, again, it's great for the winter time because of the snow and ice, but it's also great because it gives you that cozy, warm, dark feeling that just in my mind like matches the imagery of like winter. And I think that everyone and their grandmother needs to read this book. It's YA, there is no spice, I don't think there's much swearing. It's very good for like, you know, younger audiences, but I think that the emotion and the depth in this book will resonate with anybody of any age. So I highly, highly recommend this and the sequel. They're both 4.5 stars for me, and they couldn't be more perfect for this time of year. We are back to ice skating with this next book, which is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. This is a book that is, to my mind, Daisy Jones and the Six meets the Olympics ice skating, like the actual Olympics. So we follow our main character, whose name I believe is Kat, and her friend slash foster, don't think foster brother, they're just friends. And his name is Heath. I forgot that I actually did, like, look at this, I did scrapbooking in here. I forgot about that. Wow. Anyway, I love the cover of this book. I think it's so beautiful. But this book, I say, is like the Olympics meets Daisy Jones, because if you don't know, Daisy Jones by Taylor Jenkins Reid is a book told entirely in interview format, as we follow this like fictional band. And this book is very similar because half of it is done through interview format. So half of it is like Kat narrating her story, her and Heath, who met when they were like 8 or 9, and then her dad kind of took him in as a foster child, and they've lived together and they've been friends for their entire life, and it turns into a romance later on in life. But they also both skate together, and Kat has wanted to be the best skater in the entire world since she was very, very young. Heath is more there like to support her and partner with her. His dream is more to make Kat happy, and Kat's dream is to be the best. So you see there's like a little bit of dissonance there, but the two of them are just training their entire lives to be the best. And then they go to the Olympics and they compete, and there's so much drama. Everything that could happen, that could go wrong in this book, goes wrong, as far as like, you know, politics within the ice skating world and the romance and other characters competing against them and things like that. So yeah, half of it is told, half of that entire story is told in Kat's like monologue from start to the end, but then half of it is told as in like in the future, looking back, because it's almost like all these characters got interviewed for a documentary like in the future, and they're talking about what happened looking backwards, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of both. It's a really great mix. It's such an engaging read. Like, again, everything that could go wrong goes wrong, and so nothing is ever boring. And I think this is great because in my mind, obviously the Winter Olympics is perfect for the winter season, but also ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with figure skating and watching the figure skating Olympics, specifically like Gracie Gold and like the early 2010s. That was my thing. So reading this book was like experiencing that all over again, and it was just interesting to see more of an inside view of ice skating politics than just what we see on TV. More literary than romance, but again, perfect for this season, and I really recommend, if you haven't picked this up, Lane Fargo is an amazing writer, and this was so good. The next book is actually a thriller, and that's very new for me. I don't read a lot of thrillers at all, but I read a couple this year, and one of them was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Now this, again, a thriller, so I don't want to say too much about the story. Basically, we follow this like married couple who decides to take a weekend retreat to go live in this cottage in the icy mountainous woods. I think that they're in, oh, it's in Scotland. I was gonna say Ireland, but it's in Scotland. So they take a weekend away to kind of try to fix their marriage. So the main characters' names are Adam and Amelia. But the thing with Adam is he actually has face blindness, and so he can see, but he doesn't recognize people. Like, he doesn't see someone's face and recognize them to the person. He just hears people's voices and uses that for recognition. So a very interesting condition that I've never actually heard of before I read this book, but it was really interesting the way that it tied into the thriller aspect of this. I think the book was pretty good. I think the twist at the end really got me. I was not expecting it at all, but I've also not read many thrillers, so I can't say that it would twist for everybody like that. But I saw that Sarah Caroli read this book and adored it for the same reason, and she reads a lot of thrillers, so maybe take her word over mine. But I will just say, evidently by this cover and the fact that it takes place in the snowy mountains of Scotland, like, this is very wintry. Like, they're walking outside during blasts of wind and ice, and they're trying to huddle up in this old cottagey church that they're staying in because they're trying to keep the cold out and potentially other evils that have worked their way into this thriller story. Yeah, it was engaging. And if you want a thriller book, I can't recommend many, but I can recommend this one for you. And I think it would be great to read during the cooler months of the year. Trying to keep my time spent with each book shortened, so this video isn't like an hour long. Hopefully you guys are getting just what you need from each book without me over explaining it. But anyway, the next book on this list is a personal favorite of mine. I adore this book, and that is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I read this book in, I think, April of this year, and I still think about it sometimes. This book is just so good, and again, it deserves all the hype that it gets online. So basically, this book follows a town in, I think it's Sweden, called Beartown, and it's very, very isolated, very deserted. There are only a couple hundred people who live there. The population has decreased as the economy has just gotten worse and worse because they live in a very, very cold climate where I think like 8 or 9 months of the year it is icy and snowy, and it's miserable, essentially. And the only thing that really keeps this town together is the junior hockey team. There is a team of, I think it's like 16 to 18-year-olds that everybody in the town is connected to. Either they've played in it when they were younger, or they were married to someone who played in it, or they have a child, or they know the coach, or they support it financially. Like, everyone is connected to this one hockey team. It's what ties everyone together. But of course, when you're basing your entire connection on a bunch of high school teenagers, we're gonna have some issues because teenagers are not perfect, and there's a lot of drama, and there's a lot of sadness, and there's a lot of just like interwoven issues in this book. And we follow every single character that you can imagine. Like, we follow the coach, the GM, the old GM, every single player, their parents, their siblings. Like, we get so many different point of views, and the chapters are interesting because you get only like a couple of paragraphs in one person, and then you switch to the next, and switch to the next. Like, it doesn't keep you in one person's head for a very long time, but that also kind of insinuates how they're all very connected and how everyone in the story is tied together through hockey. Now, I am a hockey girl through and through. I actually work with the hockey team at my university, so I love hockey. It's like one of my favorite sports ever, and this book was fun to read because I do enjoy hockey and I can understand like all those references, but at the same time, if you don't like hockey, I think you would still really enjoy this book because it is about more than just the sport. And I think that this is just perfect. It's cold temperature-wise, but it's cold emotionally too. And I felt very numb and sad after reading this, but I also think at the same time, it's just a book that everyone needs to read because it tackles some very hard topics and issues that I think everyone should be exposed to. So if you haven't read Beartown, 100% do. I love Frederick Bachman's writing. Go pick this one up. Okay, we're gonna move right along to the next category, which is fantasy with snow. Now, just a warning, this is a more vague category. I wanted to put fantasy on this list because in my opinion, Fantasy Girl Fall extends to winter. Like, the best time to read fantasy besides all year is specifically in the autumn and winter seasons, but I think it's kind of hard to find fantasy that specifically like is centered around snow and ice and things like that. So these are just books that from what I remember have seen specifically about like that weather and temperature, but there's a lot more to this book than just cold vibes, I suppose. So take it with a grain of salt. But we're gonna start out this list with Guild by Raven Kennedy. Now, this is a book that I'm actually considering unhauling. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed the book, gave it 3 stars, but it wasn't phenomenal. But one thing that sticks out to me about this book were snow pirates. Yep. You heard that right. There are snow pirates in this book, which in my opinion is so comically funny. And that's also really awkward because the snow pirates in this book are definitely the villains, sometimes SAing some of the characters, which if you didn't know is a huge trigger in this book. And if you cannot read that, don't read this because it is very graphic. But at the same time, like, snow pirates, hello. Cold energy in this one. This is an entire book that's kind of like a retelling of King Midas. We follow our main character whose name is Aurelia. What is her name? Auren, A-U-R-E-N. And she is like King Midas's prized possession. She is made completely out of gold. She lives in this like very long extended cage that lives in his castle. I'm not quite sure how that works even after reading, but whatever. And she feels very indebted to Midas because he saved her from something in her past. And she's definitely being gaslit and manipulated by him throughout the entirety of this book. I'm considering unhauling this one. I don't know how much I'm intrigued to read the next couple, although I really do adore the cover. And I think that the idea of Snow Pirates is really creative. I also think that it's really weird that she has what she calls ribbons that are just like parts of her that are like really long and trail off of her shoulders, like down her back, like ribbons of not skin, but like gold. Like, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. Honestly, I'm just like so confused by that. So definitely a weird book for me. This is not a very raving review now that I'm really thinking about it. And I probably should be nicer to this book. I just like only remember some negative things, to be honest, but I remember the Snow Pirates. And so that counts for winter books. The next book is my very damaged copy of When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I lent this book to my friends and it came back a little bit worse for wear, but this is one of my absolute favorite books from last year, if not like top 5. Like, I adored this book. And I remember it having some snowy elements in it. So again, take it with a grain of salt. If I look at the map in the very beginning of this book, there are sections in the mountains and there are sections like specific dragons that only live up in cold temperatures. If you didn't know, this book is very much about dragons, which I love. So yeah, I'm not overconfident with me saying that this is a wintry book, but I will take any excuse to mention this book ever, anywhere, ever. It is 600 plus pages. It is a brick. Everyone says it's so confusing because there is also a 20-page glossary in this book to kind of explain the world and the magic system and the characters that makes sense to nobody before you start the book. People think that the writing is overwritten and overdone and that it's just complicated and the dragons are just used more as taxis than actual characters with like emotion behind them. Do I get the criticism? Sure. Do I care? No. I don't care. I don't care. This was so good. It was 5 stars. The romance sucked me in. It's so good. The story itself is actually really sad when you get to the end and you realize what's been happening the entire time. I think the world itself, even though it is complicated, maybe overly complicated, I think it is still gorgeous and I think it's so creative and I love the dragons and I love the way that the weather and the seasons and time works in this book. And I love the idea because in this book, when dragons die, they like curl up and then they turn into moons in the Sky. Tell me that it's not the sickest concept you've ever heard. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. And I just love this book and everything that's in it. And I don't care if you criticize it, because to me it is perfection, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out next year. So speaking of, if you want to ever read this book, now is the time to do it, because the sequel comes out I think in early 2026, and you better believe I'll be getting my hands on that ASAP. So if you want to twin with me and read that book next year, make sure you read this book sometime this winter. Personally, I read it last December, and in my opinion, it felt great for the winter season. So again, a fantasy that needs to be consumed ASAP. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. And this one, you have to read. Mandatory material. The next book is From Blood and Ash. This is gonna be a quick reference. Everyone has very mixed feelings about this book again, and I promise I have good book taste, okay? I feel like I've been recommending books in this list that people don't like often. I just like watch a lot of book content and hear a lot of opinions on both sides of every book that I read, to be honest. But this book specifically, I'm one of the people who do really enjoy this book. I need to finish the rest of the series, but Blood and Ash, it's just a fun, self-indulgent fantasy time. Is it perfect? No. Is the roleplay confusing? Hell yeah. But like, I don't care. Again, it's just fun. So this one we follow our main character, Poppy. She is the maiden in this world, which means she's basically like treated like a princess, but I don't think she actually is royalty. But what she is like highly protected and highly caged kind of inside of this like kingdom, because she has to be like pure and virgin and again the maiden, and she has to wear all white and cover her face and things like that. So she's always being protected by a bunch of guards, and one day one of her guards unfortunately gets and so he gets replaced by this guy named Hawk. And Hawk is hot and Hawk is protective, and we love Hawk in this household. I think that this book is just a really fun time. It's on the side of like being predictable while also not fully explaining enough of the characters and the world to actually be predictable, because you just simply don't know what's happening. And is that a problem? Yeah. Did I give this book 5 stars anyway? Also, yeah. And there are points in this book where she is traveling outside with Hawk, specifically like on horseback through the countryside to make it to this other location, and there's a lot of traveling in the snow, and I remember it being like an icy forest vibe. The group has to like sleep in sleeping bags on the forest floor, like all huddled together to keep warm next to a fire kind of thing. So that specifically is why I put it on this list, was because of those scenes that I remember in my head. And also, if it would help you, this book has elements of like vampires and werewolves in it. It's not specifically called that, but there are definitely elements in this book that lean towards both of those characters, and I love them both. So with that being said, you should read this book. It's so good. It's a guilty pleasure. You know, is it good? No, but I love it nonetheless. So very similar to, actually not similar to this. This, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. Blood and Ash, I recognize, is not a masterpiece, and yet I still think it's such a fun time. One more slightly trashy fantasy book, and then we'll get back to more serious conversations. Okay, I swear. I'm kidding. But The Wolf King by Lauren Powell Freeman, I think is how you pronounce her name, was honestly just a vibes read. It was. I gave this book 4 stars. Now, before we get any further, I did give the second book 3 stars, and I will not be continuing the trilogy because I simply do not care. But book 1, in my opinion, was better, and it was so much fun. So in this book, we follow our main character, Aurora. His name is Rory. She's a princess, and she gets basically rescued / captured by this wolf named Callum. He's a werewolf, and he kind of takes her to their werewolf kingdom, and it's a love triangle. Not super original. You can definitely guess the plot. You can guess what's gonna happen. You can guess who's gonna win the love triangle. You can guess everything. But that being said, it was just a simply good time, and a lot of this takes place, it reminds me of Scotland, because a lot of the characters are verging on Scottish. The audiobook had like Scottish narrators, so a lot of them are like, you know, wearing kilts and things like that, and they have clans, and they live up in the mountains where it's cold and snowy, and they ride horses with like the plaid that matches their clan, if that makes sense. So it's very much like those Scottish fantasy vibes. I think it's just a perfect read for the Christmas / wintry season, in my opinion. Again, not a perfect series. I don't think the second book was nearly as good as book 1, but it was just a simple, guilty pleasure, fun fantasy read that you can inhale in like a day and a half, you know? The audiobook itself, I personally don't think I recommend, simply because I think that the voice actors are so dramatic, and it pissed me off, specifically with book 2. Sounds that would ick me out, let's just say. So I didn't love the audiobook, but I did think that book 1 was just a really fun time. So there's another one that you can read during this season. And lastly, in this category, we gotta talk about my absolute fave, For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. I recommended this one in my autumn book as well, but it's another book that I think crosses over like both territories of fall and winter. I mean, this cover 100% gives winter. Are you kidding me? Yes, absolutely, yes. But this follows our main character Rhaenyra, aka Red, and it's a retelling of Red Riding Hood. So she is the second daughter of this kingdom. Her older sister Neve gets the crown, but the younger sister Red is for the wolf, aka she is a sacrifice that the kingdom gives to this mysterious wolfish monster in the woods who hypothetically takes a new sacrifice every generation of royals in the kingdom. So anyway, she takes her duty, I guess, and goes into the woods and she meets the wolf. His name is Aemon, and it turns out he's not a scary monster. He's just like a nerdy, dark academia, tall, lanky, keeps to himself, very emotionally like guarded guy who is absolutely so hot in my opinion. And he has this like really rundown old tower in the middle of these really suspiciously possibly alive woods, and she goes and lives with him and they try to figure out these mysteries, and it's cold and it's eerie, and the magic system in this book is built off of the woods themselves. They call it the Waterwood, and the Waterwood is a sentient being of itself, and it demands from you either magic or blood, and it's dark and it's creepy, and it is perfect for this season. I think the vibes fit autumn because dark academia and the creepiness, but I think it also fits winter because again, they're in the snow, they're keeping cold, they're lighting fires, they're drinking hot tea, they're turning into wolves a little bit. Once again, we see my werewolf king come back around. Oh my god. Anyway, it started with Shiver and it's ending with this. It's not that crazy, but I will just say that this book is very beautiful, and I love the slow burn romance, and I love the self-sacrificing that both these main characters have for each other, because it actually is a little bit sad, but they're just like so head over heels, and they're so I will protect you, that it just like tears my heart out. I think it's beautifully written. I think the vibes are immaculate. I think the romance is great. I think the plot is so original, and it's 5 stars. And it is. And I recommended this book to like literally all my friends. I do have the sequel. I've yet to read that one, but I'm recommending this to you nonetheless. I reread it this year for the second time, and it was once again 5 stars. So can do no wrong in my eyes. It's just beautiful. It's perfection, and it's perfect for the cold months. That's that. Okay, I've been yapping and yapping this entire video, but we only have a couple more, and a couple weeks go by pretty quickly because I don't remember a lot about them. So anyway, the next category and the last category is warm and cozy Christmas romance. And I have quite a few books on this list that I read at the end of last year when I, for some reason, decided to pick up some Christmassy romances. I'm never the kind of girl that reads a book for its like specific holiday. Like I've never actually read Christmassy books before until last year, but then I did a reading vlog about it and wanted to kind of dip my toe. And to be honest, I actually forgot that I read 2 of these, like completely forgot. So they were really not that memorable. But that being said, at the time, if you're looking for a specifically Christmas romance, like not just like maybe cold vibes, but like holiday, we have wreaths, we have snowmen, we are having dinner together, like Christmas vibes, then you should definitely pick up one of the following books. So the first is Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. Ali is just, she is one of a kind. She is an amazing contemporary romance author, and she always does it, and she takes a trope that you think you're gonna hate and she makes it great. This is a novella. I think it's legitimately 75 pages, but we get a full romance in that time. I'm like fully convinced by the end of those pages that these two belong together. Okay, her name is Jamie and his name is Mark, and she's trying to borrow a pan from her neighbor Mark for Christmas dinner, but they get snowed in and have to like stay the night at his house. And they were childhood friends, but they're kind of reconnecting during this night, and it kind of goes from friendly banter to something more romantic. And again, only like 75 pages. And yet I can feel the romance throughout the entire thing. It's just perfect. It's such a quick and easy thing to breeze through, but it was just such a fun time. Because they knew each other when they were younger, and he's a couple years younger than her, there is a scene towards the end of this book where, specifically, I won't spoil, but like Mark is like going through old photos that people like critique a lot. Personally, I thought it was cute. I didn't think it was creepy, but some people think it is creepy. You can take your own opinion from that, I suppose, but overall, I think Ali Hazelwood will, again, write a trope that you don't think you're gonna love, aka a 75-page romance, and then she'll just like twist it around and make it magical. So Ali did her big one with this one yet again, and I think that it's a great quick novella for you to read for the holidays. The next book is December Darling. This is written by Lauren Asher, who used to be one of my favorite contemporary authors. I think her most recent series I am not loving, but I did read this book last December, and I completely forgot that I read it, but at the time I gave it 3.5 stars, so I couldn't have been that bad, to be honest. I remember it follows 2 characters. I think one is a doctor. Maybe they're both doctors. Let me do my research. please hold. Okay, her name is Catalina and his name is Luke. I think she is his best friend's ex, so kind of drama, kind of dramatic, and I'm pretty sure that they work in a hospital together, or at least one of them definitely works in the medical field. Her sister and his best friend may be getting married, and so her sister is marrying her ex. This is getting complicated. Catalina, Luke. Luke's best friend is marrying Catalina's sister. Luke's best friend used to date Catalina, but now he's dating her sister. They're getting married, and so she's the maid of honor and he's the best man, I think. From what I remember, I think, which honestly is the perfect setup in my opinion for a Christmas romance, because it is very drama, very convoluted, and I will eat it up every time, which is probably why I gave it 3.5 stars. But yeah, this is more like she's very stubborn and he's fighting for her kind of thing. It was a novella from Lauren Asher's standards. It's like 250 pages, so it's kind of short still, but it's long for a novella. But Lauren Asher is always very long-winded in my opinion, so that's very common for her. Fun, easy, good time, Christmas vibes, some drama, some family drama. How could you go wrong? You can't. So that's that book. And then the last book that I'm trying to remember the names of the characters is Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. I know specifically Carrie Reeds loves Catherine Walsh. This is how I got the recommendation. It was from her channel. And so I picked this one up last year and completely forgot that I read it. So let me find the description yet again about this book on my computer. So, okay, the main characters are Molly and Andrew, and apparently they're both trying to get home to Ireland for the holidays, but a freak snowstorm grounds their flight. Every 10 years, they take the flight from Chicago to Dublin together, I guess. So they meet on the plane every year. They only see each other on the plane, but they meet every year around Christmas time on the plane. Yeah, so apparently they're like best friends, but only during Christmas planes, I suppose. But she's determined to get him home for Christmas on time to get to that Christmas dinner in Ireland. And apparently it's a very loyal journey, and they take it together and they fall in love. I can't tell you anything about this book. I don't remember. But I wrote in my review that it was like laugh out loud funny. And honestly, that's great for like a holiday romance in my opinion. So couldn't tell you anything about the characters or their personalities or anything like that. But I will just say that from what I wrote down in my review, I was cackling through the entire book. And it's also a kind of short one. It's only like 350 pages. So quickish, easy-ish for the holiday season. Pick it up. Maybe. Again, I'm a kind of girl that doesn't read Christmas romances. These are like the only 3 I've ever read, I think. So I don't have many to recommend in this category, but these are ones that have been tried by me and I enjoyed all of them. I gave them all above 3.5 stars. So yeah, that's that for the holiday modern romances. The very last book on this entire list today is one that I put under the cozy category because it gives me cozy Christmas vibes. Technically, this is a very year-round book, but I read it last year during Christmas, and it honestly like could be a yearly tradition for me to either read this book again or watch the Greta Gerwig version of this as a movie. If you couldn't tell by that reference, the book I'm talking about today is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a classic, obviously, very well-loved classic that I actually read when I was very young, like 12-ish. For some reason, I was really into like classics at that time, and I have loved this book ever since. It is such an accessible book to read. We follow 4 sisters, so Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, and they are all staying at this house with their mother, who they call Marmee, and they live in like colonial period America. So their father is out fighting in the war. I think it's the Civil War from what I remember correctly. So maybe not colonial period, I guess it's like the 1850s, but whatever, it's old. The book starts out on Christmas Eve and they're all gathering with Marmee in like the sitting room of their house, and there's like a famous line where Jo says Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without presents because they are too poor to really afford presents for each other. And it honestly, the entire book takes place over like a decade of time. We follow these sisters grow and change, but in my opinion, it just gives Christmas vibes to me because the family, it's just, they just love each other so much. They argue and they fight, but they're just deeply like such a wholesome, beautiful family, and it gives me the warm Christmas vibes because it's like people are coming together at the end of the year with their families for a nice holiday tradition. And for me, one of my traditions is reading or watching the movie for this because it just gives the best vibe. Yeah, this is great. And if you want to read a classic, it's very accessible. Like I read this when I was 12, for goodness sakes. So there's not a lot of crazy vocabulary that you won't be able to understand. It's like atmospheric, it's beautiful, but it also just has such heartfelt, touching moments in it. Yeah. It's just such a good classic in my opinion, one of my absolute faves, and it's perfect in my opinion for the Christmas season. You can disagree with me if you want to. There's a lot of beautiful descriptions of the weather in other seasons as well, but I love the snowy atmosphere in this book specifically. So with that being said, this is the last book on today's list. I hope you enjoyed all of these recommendations. Let me know in the comments below what you're going to be reading during the Christmas and or winter season, and which of these books you may have read and also recommend, or if you have another book to add onto this list, let me know. Again, I'm filming this in advance but I would love to read some new winter romances or fantasy books or any other genre, to be honest, during the next couple of months. So give a girl some recommendations in the comments below. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're excited for Bookmas as much as I am. This is my first year trying it, so we're hopefully gonna make it all 12 days. Let's see what happens, but I will see you in literally 2 days for our next video. So make sure you subscribe, have an amazing couple of days, and I will see you very soon.